All right, guys, what is up? This is the 24th iteration. I've got the man, the myth, the legend, my good buddy, Jesse Stanton in the house. Jesse is a longtime real estate investor, went from wholesaler to buy and hold. He's tried almost every exit strategy, and now he's coaching people on how to live their dreams as an REI or as a real estate investor. So, Jesse, why don't you kick us off, kind of tell us who you are and where you're from and what you got going on?
For sure, man. Yeah. Yeah. Adam, first and foremost, man, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on. I love what you're doing. I love the opportunity that we've had to be able to get to know each other and how you're using this to help others, man. This is awesome. Get information out. I think that's the hardest thing, man. As a lot of people don't know where to get the information that they need to be able to do the things that they want to in their business. And so you're a big part of getting the right people into the right rooms, man. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
man, they got to show up to your Zooms on Saturday.
do what?
They gotta show up to your Zooms on Saturday. That's what it is. That's where all the good info's at.
Oh, thanks, man. For those of you that don't know me, I am a 15-year Air Force veteran. Got out of the Air Force when I was in the Air Force. I was an instructor, so they sent me to a place. Speaking of San Antonio, sent me to a place down in Texas to learn how to be a professional instructor and mentor and coach and public speaker and all the things. And I love doing that. It was probably the best part of my military experience was being able to take those skills and hone them and take that Air Force leadership training and the things that I learned and take that into my business. So I got out and I went all into real estate investing full time. I live in a small igloo here in Wasilla, Alaska, with my wife and four kids and two Yorkies and three moose, and we're just a big happy family up here, man. So I've got a business partner. I've got a couple of different business partners. Chris, who lives in Florida, and Carlin, who lives in New Mexico, which ironically was my first duty station. She lives in a small town called Alamogordo, New Mexico, which we used to call Alamogordo, New Mexico. So it's not one of those places where you're like, oh my gosh, like I just have to go through Alamogordo when I go visit New Mexico. So I feel for her, but those guys are on to bigger and better things here shortly. So yeah, I own a handful of different businesses and primarily just working on real estate and then helping other people understand, some of the things that I did and the way that I'm growing my businesses and my network and my relationships and kind of, trying to break it down to a step-by-step blueprint for other people to replicate. Well, that's me in a
Yeah.
nutshell, man. I love to hike, love to go four-wheeling, love to go camping and fishing. It's September now officially. So we've already got snow on our mountains, and I'm expecting to go into hibernation mode here here shortly, brother.
You and the other eight people in the town?
Do what?
I said you and the other eight people in the town?
Yeah. Exactly, man.
All of y'all?
All of
The
us.
all the people in the state?
That's right, man. There's like two people that live here. So that's actually been kind of one of the challenges about being an entrepreneur up here in Alaska is there isn't anybody doing what I want to be doing up here. There isn't anybody that's making the kind of money that I want to be making. So there isn't anybody that I can just sit down with and have a conversation or build a relationship with. And so in a lot of ways, it's almost like trying to build a business from Mars. So actually speaking of that, I'm actually giving a TED talk, and that's kind of that was the name of it, was building a business from Mars. So that's been my experience in Alaska. It's been kind of a double-edged sword, man, because I don't have those resources that everybody else in the lower 48. Everybody who's not in Alaska, we call them the lower 48. So everybody who's in the lower 48 has with being able to travel and just have access and a direct plug into a lot of these players, I don't have. So it hindered me, but it allowed me to build skills in a way that nobody else gets to simply just because of where I live. So kind of a
Sounds like it
double-edged
helped
sword,
you.
but it's been a great learning curve for sure.
Well, it sounds like it helped you build a level of resourcefulness that most people don't have, too.
I would 100% agree. At the risk of sounding arrogant, if I was to move somewhere to, like California or Florida or Arizona or whatever, like it would be like this is what would happen just because I would know exactly what to do and where to go and all that kind of stuff. Right now, everything's having to be done virtually. So it comes with a little bit of a challenge, but That's okay, man. Life's all it's all about the journey, you know. So I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah, so if Jesse moves to the lower 48, everybody else is in trouble.
No, hopefully everybody else comes with, man. You know, I for the longest time, dude, I I always used to look at my strengths as weaknesses. I always used to look at other people who were doing what I wanted to be doing and just think, my goodness, like if I had what they had, or if I could do what they do, or if I had their network, or if I had their ability to do X, Y, and Z, like I would just be so much better off. And it wasn't until a friend really helped me understand that, Jesse, like this person that you're looking at has a gift. And the only difference between you and them is all they did was just double down on that gift, where you're looking at everybody else and you're wishing that you had their gift and their gift and their gift and their gift and their gift. They're not wishing that. They know how to go build a network of other people and how to create something where those other individuals just get to leverage their gifts. And that way that person doesn't have to do all the things. They just get to focus in on, you know, their zone of genius. It's like, dude, Jesse, that's what you're missing. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, cool.
And that's a really good point, actually. That's how you and I connected was you were doing the friends with benefits, turn speed dating, turn grow your business Zoom.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a feeling of like what my gift was, which was like, networking and connecting and, building relationships. And so I showed up there and actually Jessica, who's here, you and I walked her through something on that Zoom, like, hey, you're thinking about being an integrator, like, and lo and behold, her and I have been friends ever since. So I think that's also one of your gifts and talents is like you just put people in the right rooms and like all of a sudden, boom, best friends.
You know, it's really funny how that works, man. I love the conversation we're having, man, because that like that in and of itself, I think when a lot of people get into business or get into, we'll just keep it with real estate since we're talking about real estate. Jessica says, find your tribe 100%. I'm, you know, I think a lot of people get into the tactical side of things. I think a lot of people are looking at their skills wrong. I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I want to be successful in real estate, then I have to be a closer because that's where the glory is. Or I've got to learn how to underwrite or comp, or I got to learn how to fill out contracts, or I got to learn how to do all these things, you know. And the reality is that you don't have to know any of those things. And to tell somebody who doesn't really understand what that means is it's kind of hard for them to hear. It's probably the equivalent of telling somebody that who's never heard you don't need any cash, credit, or credentials to go buy a property. The first time they hear that, you're like, what?
Yeah,
But
like
then you
that can't
dive
be
in, you get a
true.
little bit educated. Right. Buying a house less than a cup of a coffee, that sounds like a scam. So
What
I
kind of
understand
Ponzi
like what I'm
scheme are you
saying.
running, Jesse?
You know, it can equally sound kind of as awkward, like, oh wow, like tell me more about that. You don't need to know any of those things. How so? And then Adam, it's literally what you just said, dude. Me knowing that that's my superpower. I created a mastermind with a handful of other individuals that we meet weekly. And the cool thing about this is that this is the first time this happened probably 2 months ago. And this was the first time that I've done something like this where intentionally every single person in there was ahead of me. Like everybody in here, like they were doing like 500,000 a month. One of the guys hit their first $1 million months and like all the stuff. And it was the first time that I ever got a bunch of people, and these got none of these other people are in real estate, by the way. So it was that was particularly really cool too, to be able to get a different dynamic going. But my ability to go create value by just getting other people and bringing them into a room, and because I'm the one that did it, because I'm the one that led it, because I'm the one that structured it. I'm the one that keeps everybody on time. I'm the one that's setting the action steps. I'm the one that's setting the goals. I'm the one that's like, because I took charge of it, even though everybody else is ahead of me, like that gives me status. that gives me, everybody filters through me now because everybody sees me as the authority figure, even though everybody else in here is ahead of me. But because I created that room for opportunity to be had, for conversations to be had that otherwise never would have happened. So that in and of itself, just simply having the gift of gab, or you could call it the ability to just create friendships. And when you're just intentional about what you can do, my goodness, I mean, it's interesting to see really what can be accomplished and how much money you can make, and like all these things without knowing anything about really anything. If you understand people, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with a little bit of leadership in that crazy rectangular box we all carry in our pockets, right?
Yeah, yeah, dude, 100%, bro. Jeez, my goodness.
A couple of group chats, and it's like next thing you know, you're buying properties with people and you have no idea. Like, I organized my first meetup like 2 weeks ago. And it
Mm.
literally just took me to ask somebody else, like, hey, would you mind helping me create the group chat and the list and like just keep the chat alive? And he was like, yeah. And next thing you know, we had a dozen people all sitting around drinking beer, smoking cigars at a bar.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, just a little bit of initiative, man. So I got people asking for the link.
And likewise, it's the same thing though. Now, me, him, and his closer is on his team. Guess what? We're all looking at buying RV parks together.
Bro, that's awesome, man.
But like you said, it's the status comes from just being able to organize and know what your strengths are. And sometimes your strength is just being able to put people in the room. You call it
Yeah.
the gift of gab. Down here, we call it spinning a yarn. Same
Spinning a
difference,
yarn.
right? Yeah.
That's awesome. I haven't heard it called that before. I'm gonna use that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's an old Southern thing. They call it spinning a yarn. I guess like back in the old days when they would actually have the foot pedal and they would, push to spin the yarn. They would usually talk while they were doing it.
Okay. Okay. I dig it. I like that.
So that's one of the skill sets that I picked up throughout the years, going through sales. And then especially when I worked in the French Quarter, like I was in tourism, I did the pedicabs, like the bike taxis.
Mm.
I don't think you ever knew that.
Mm.
We talked about it a little bit when I had Carlin on, and we had to basically be able to like navigate and plan out our operations for the day, right? Like I had a primary, secondary, tertiary route, but at the same time, like we're entertaining. I'd turn around, I'd tell them about the history, we tell them some jokes, we'd have some laughs, we were playing music, we were doing whatever, and so people don't realize that sometimes that's all it takes to is be able to show people how to have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. You make it all about the other person. I love the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. My goodness, like that
Mm.
should be like a once a quarter read for everybody. And it's funny how much when you read a book like that, it's funny how much you start to pick up every single time you read it because you're a different person. You're reading it from a different perspective.
I think the studies have shown that you have to read a book cover to cover probably about 11 times to fully comprehend the vast majority of the information that's actually compiled in the book.
Oh wow. I
And so
believe it. That makes sense.
that goes to show you, right? Like, because there's books that we talk about all the time, whether it's like the compound effect or the gap in the gain or who not how, or it's how to win friends and influence people.
Hmm.
Um, you really have to read and reread and study and take it to heart, but eventually those things do become second nature to you.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And you got to take the time to teach the things that you're learning. I think when you're learning a new skill or a habit or hobby, one of the things I always have my clients do every single week, part of their weekly homework, is to go and find somebody who would benefit from knowing this and take the time to go teach it to them because that person's going to have questions.
Mm.
And so it's going to
Yeah.
put you in a position where, when I was first getting into this and I was first getting my toes, into real estate, I would go to work and like I said, I was an instructor. So I had this big whiteboard that was at the front of the class. And each time that we would, finish up a lesson or we'd go on break, I'd be like, hey, do you guys want to learn some cool stuff? Do you guys want to learn about real estate and how to make money and how to leverage your VA entitlements appropriately? So I'd get out this big whiteboard, man, and I'd be drawing all sorts of things and putting numbers on the board and carrying the one and, all the things, man. And they would have questions, and they're like, well, Jesse, what happens if the due on sale gets called? And I'm like, shit, what the hell is a due on sale? So then I
Yeah.
put me in a position where I got to go home and I got to research and I got to go through the training and I got to watch the videos and I got to take notes and I got to think about how I'm going to communicate what I just learned back to those individuals. And so it put me in a position where the next day I'd have to get up and I'd have to draw it out and I'd have to be able to explain it. And then they might have follow-up questions. So it put me in a position where I was learning things at such a rapid rate and I was learning things intimately because I was taking the initiative to go teach something about, every single time I learned something. So I had the luxury that I did that professionally for my W-2. So it was never like I necessarily had to go out of my way, but it was like, hey, while I'm up here, since we're learning about Air Force stuff, do you guys want to learn about money?
Yeah. Do you want to learn more about real estate and how you can be in
Yeah.
it with no money?
Yeah, exactly, man. So it was cool, man. I learned a lot. I highly encourage anybody who's looking to step up their game or their personal development to take that initiative to teach it. Go find other people to explain it to. Go talk it to your kids about it. Go see how you can figure out how to take a concept like subject to and explain it to your 8-year-old or your 9-year-old.
Yeah, which is mega powerful. And that's also why like I try to go back and forth between books. Like I'll read a tactical book, but then I'll read a mindset book, but then I'll read a tactical book. Right?
Yeah.
You want to expand not just your mindset, but your skill set as well.
Right. I read two books at the same time. I always wake up and that's what I do. I start my day off with a mindset book. And then later that night, right before I go to bed, I always got skill set books laying next to my bed. So I'll read a skill set book before I go to bed. I think
Yeah,
that's a great thing to do, man.
I just went through the five dysfunctions of a team right into the gap in the gain, and now I'm in buy then build.
Mm, what have you learned?
Buy then build is a really, really good one. I think you'd like it a lot. So far I'm about 30 pages in, and what I've really learned is just the massive failure rate in business in general. Like
Hmm.
startups have like a 98% failure rate, even VCs have like a 75% failure rate. Acquisitions, though, especially if you're buying at like $1 million or above,
Hmm.
not you're just you're taking the shortcut. You're taking the the express lane by you're letting somebody else do most of the work, the hard work, all the work I've done through my career, right? Like starting from the ground up. You're
Hmm.
buying oftentimes the assets that come with the business, the working capital, a proven model, the employees. You don't have to go out and hire. Like if you do your due diligence right, it's just like buying a property. You're just buying a distressed asset that just needs a little bit of love and value add. And that's why it's so successful is because you can come in as the entrepreneur and solely focus on the value add. You don't have to focus on anything else because it's already there. Product market fit, pricing, employees,
Hmm.
org charts, it's all there already.
Hmm. Interesting. And what did you say that was called?
Buy then build.
Oh, buy then build.
Hmm.
Interesting. So how is that played into like what are you currently working on right now?
That's been a big thing for me because like I was telling you, I've been working on RV parks. It has been the new thing. Right now I want to get my cash flow numbers up, so I'm focused on I sent off 6 on market leads that we're underwriting and submitting LOIs on.
Okay. So
So we're
mobile home
looking,
parks, that's your primary thing you're working on right now.
yeah, RV parks because we want to do more of the short term stays. We're not doing like the permanent stays
Got it.
like mobile home parks would be. So they're not fixed, but around here there's a bunch of them, and Louisiana's not one of the hot markets for it. Everybody else is looking in the Sun Belt. They're all looking at like South Carolina, North Carolina. They're looking at like Georgia. Some people are looking in Arizona. They're not looking here, and I'm cool with that. Like y'all don't have to look here. I'll look here. I'll go buy 5 or 6 of them, and I'll be good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. So what seems to be what's the big bottleneck you think for a lot of people that are getting into like RV parks in your
Um, I think
experience?
I think a lot of people just think it's not a safe asset class.
Why is that?
I've heard that more than once. They think that the economy is going to affect it, or that COVID or something else that comes our way is going to affect it more than it actually is.
Hmm.
RV parks were one of the better performing assets throughout COVID. Like they did really well, and they solve a huge affordability issue. As affordability goes down in the US, RV parks are pretty steady. Like I was just watching an interview Pace was doing with somebody right here, like in my backyard in Slidell. They're charging like 585 a month for the rent. People, their longest tenant there has been there for 15 years,
Is that
like
right?
in an RV. Again, it's
No
not
kidding.
fixed. It's not like it's not a mobile home park. It's an
Right.
RV park. They can drive the RV off the lot anytime they want to, but they've been there for 15 years.
Oh wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think the expenses are higher too, right? Or that it requires some kind of special skill set. But if you've ever underwritten multifamily, it's more or less the same thing. It's just less capex, so you end up with a slightly higher NOI.
Interesting. So you made that like the one thing that you're focusing on right now.
Pretty much, yeah.
You're
Like I
going an
still
inch
do,
wide and a mile deep on RV parks.
yep. Because right now that's what's going to boost my cash flow numbers up to where I want them to be.
Got it.
I, I still do the other things that we do. Like I still like right now I have an active integrator proposal. Like I still sell integrator work for my integrators that I have on my team,
Hmm.
but I'm not doing the heavy lifting in the integrator side. And I still do
You
capital
sell
raise.
integrator work.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means kind of like you have Jay-Z. Anything that James does for one of your companies, we can do too.
But
So
James is part of my company. James is like Cody
yeah,
Barton is to Pace. Like
right,
he's not like a for
right,
hire type deal.
correct. But we can come in like fractionally for you or for your team,
Uh-huh.
and whether it's on a project basis or a recurring basis.
Mm,
So we're marketing it more to like newer teams, some of them are or some that are just starting to get established. Because maybe
interesting.
they don't have an on-staff integrator that is as cool as James, right? Like maybe they just need somebody that can set up their CRM and get them going. Maybe they need a new website. Maybe they need
Oh, okay.
somebody to scrape their leads for them every month. Like we can do that too.
Dude, that is super dope, man. Dude, integrators in and of themselves are like a needle in a stack of needles, man. Like they're hard, man, to come across. Finding good integrators, man. And so because everybody, I think I don't know if it's a honestly don't know if it's a skill set thing or if it's a thing where people see integrator visionary relationship in a different light and everybody kind of wants to be a visionary regardless of whether or not they're that fits them personally.
I
And so
think it's
finding a
both.
good integrator, dude, is super, super hard. But when you find them, it's like, dude, if you're an integrator and you're good at what you do, you're Tom Brady, bro. Like you can literally go play in whatever team that you want.
Yep. Now the thing about this, Jesse, I'm almost equal skilled in both.
Dude, that's deadly. That's even wow. Bro.
Yeah, so like I do a lot of the visionary work for the integrator team, like the branding and the marketing and the whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's why I do the sales for it.
Dang. Bro, that's deadly, man. Having somebody of those strengths. Wow. I didn't know that, dude. I had no idea. Wow.
it
Well,
it's a
that
wild
certainly
world to
explains a
live in.
lot.
Yeah, it's a wild world to live in when you can do a little bit of both. But I mean, like I told you before, like I started 5 or 6 companies over the last 13 years from the ground
Yeah.
up. So I
Hmm.
didn't have a choice. Like at the time when I started even this company, I didn't know what visionary and integrator were. I just knew I had to do it all. I didn't have anybody.
For sure.
I didn't even have a partner.
Jeez. Wow. So how have you grown and iterated your business over those years? I mean, we're talking about self-development, we're talking about leadership. You know, you mentioned the book Who Not How. You know, how have you built your business? What have you learned as a leader and as a CEO
I mean,
since
so
doing everything
much,
on your own, man?
so much. The biggest thing I think I learned is how to really put people together. Um, I've really gotten a knack for building teams and figuring out like kind of who needs to be where and kind of helping people find their skill sets, like finding their avatar. I think that was why when I came into the community, that was so easy for me, and that's why you and I would get up there on speed dating and we would just riff with people and we'd be like, I could listen to them for 5 minutes. I could be like, no, you're not a closer. What do you mean? That's all I've ever wanted to be was a closer. It's like, no, but you're not a closer. Like you have these soft skills and these hard skills, which I'm hearing because you're talking to me and you're telling me what you do and what you like. You're actually better fit for this role.
Mm,
And, like, so that's what I do now for that consulting gig
mhm,
is I'm helping her move and things around and shift. And we're looking at things like budgets and roles and responsibilities and labor costs. And like I said, I manage her project management software. So, like I would say the biggest thing I learned from having to do both is that branding is everything and everything is
mhm,
branding. Alex Hormozy said that. And so you really do have to like live it. You got to get it how you live it, right? Like everything that you do is branding. If you show up and, if you do home services and your shirts are all tattered and sun faded, like that's
mhm,
branding. If your trucks are dirty, that's branding. If your people have, their pants below their waist, like that's branding. Like every little thing you do that creates another perception, that's branding.
mhm.
And so, branding is best exhibited though by the culture you build. And that's what I enjoy the most about the integrator work is doing the ops and coaching people up and like, building that intentional culture because you have a culture whether you intend to have one or not. And if you don't intend to have one, you probably have a bad one.
Interesting. So what are some of the things you've done to intentionally build out your brand?
Some of the things that we've done is primarily taking the time with customers. That's
Mm,
a really, really big one. Like giving them that level of education, answering all their
yeah.
questions, spending time with them, making sure that no details go unnoticed. Like whether we don't leave a mess, we don't tear up their yard, we take care of their stuff like it's our own. We we look out for them in their best interest and make sure that their dog doesn't get out of the backyard. We sometimes if like I said, they'll ask us questions while we're doing it, and we're explaining to them how we do it and why we do it and why does it matter. Like, you know, I've walked people through all kinds of crazy stuff, from how to build their own fire pit in their backyard to how to build a rack to, why they should have a stack, should they have it covered, not covered, should it be here versus there, should it be against the house, not against the house, should
Yeah.
it be inside, should it not? Like we answer all those questions in one visit.
Wow, dude. You know, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was your product is not your product.
No, you're the product.
Your product is user experience.
Yep.
That's right along with what you just said, man. What do you think most people get wrong about that when it comes to user experience?
I think that most people honestly just think that that customer is just one customer. And what they don't realize is that one customer is actually like 1,000 customers, especially nowadays with social media,
Hmm.
right? If I go to Jesse's house and I'm having a bad day, if I'm sick, if I'm just like, if I'm pissy, if I'm not feeling it, and I give Jesse a bad experience, Jesse's gonna go online and he's gonna make it worth people knowing that I gave him a bad experience. And even if he doesn't, right? Let's assume Jesse's old school. He's like, no, that guy probably had a bad day. He's still not going to recommend me to anybody ever again. And so we try to treat every single customer like they're our last because they very well could be. So I think that's a really big one for me is like you have to treat every single customer like that is the last customer you will ever earn because one day it could be. You just never know.
Adam's riding that Alaska internet. Oh man, we're
It's,
just getting to the good part too. There he is.
yeah,
There he
man.
is.
We're we're running on some bullshit right now. You I saw you nodding your head, Jesse, and then all of a sudden I was having a little
Like, let me know in the comments. I'd love to interact with you guys too. Like, what do you guys think is the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to user experience?
Like I couldn't really get her to give me any more like, time. And I felt like you were gonna be there for me and she didn't. She will do that like they lure you in, but then they push you off, onto, oh, well, you have a whole thing of videos. You don't need me anymore. Like you're in. That's it. That's all I was there for. I brought you in. That's it.
Gotcha. So they made it more about themselves than about you.
I would say so. Like, because if you're gonna, bring somebody in and make it sound like, oh, we're going into business together, I'm gonna help you along the way. You're thinking that this is gonna be like a team effort, but then it was just to get you into there because they get paid obviously once they get you in, you
I was
know?
just about to say, like, how much did they get paid for you to come on, for them to
Yeah.
onboard you? It sounds like sleazy sales stuff,
Mhm.
pyramid schemes. And
Yes.
everybody that you get in under you, you'll get a percentage of what they make. And so, yeah, she was your BFF while you were going through the motions. And then as soon as you were in, it was like, okay, it reminds me of why I stopped selling university memberships education degrees, should I say, at AIU. Later, we found out they weren't properly accredited, but I remember AIU was an online university, and we were taught to nurture and foster these relationships with prospective students. And then after they had logged in X amount of days into the online platform, their money was gone. Like, you know what I mean? Like they had to, by law, they had to go X amount of days before they could keep the money. And it was like $30,000, $40,000 for an associate's degree, which everybody knows you can go to city colleges and then, transfer into a bachelor's somewhere else. But here I was telling these $30,000, $40,000 educations because I had drank the Kool-Aid. That was back in the day when I didn't know better about the corporate Kool-Aid. And I remember how I felt when I discovered I couldn't talk to them anymore after I had called them, encouraged them, hey, you log into class yet? I could talk to them for that first week, but after that, I couldn't talk to them anymore. I didn't stay there very long because I could sell anything if I believe in the product. But when I feel like I'm lulling people into a false sense of security, it gives me the ick. So I totally know what you mean, Pansy. It sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I love it.
But to your question, Jesse, about what is the missing link? Um, Adam was talking about that customer possibly being your last customer if you don't treat them right, if they don't get the right experience. I think people forget about life before technology, when word of mouth was the #1 form of advertising. Like if you leave people with a good impression, they're going to tell everybody about you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to reviews, most people will leave a bad review before they leave a good one. So if you rub them the wrong way, they will readily tell you why that restaurant sucks. Okay. But if you have a great experience, it has to be above a 10 out of 10 experience to drive them to the good review. Very few people falling into that 4 out of 5 category, or I'm saying it was an 8 out of 10. You're either gonna get the best or the worst of it. So you absolutely want to have a good name for yourself. You want to create a good name for yourself. Your reputation is everything.
Well said. Adam, what do you think about that? That's really interesting, man. That if you have a 10 out of 10 experience, then that's like, to Naomi's point, like that's kind of the expectation. So you have
Oh,
to
it
give them
is.
like an 11 out of 10. You get a good
Yeah,
review.
you 1000%, you've got to hit that like 11 out of 10, 12 out of 10 mark if you really want to get that good review, especially if you're expecting to get 5 stars. You're not going to get it otherwise. They're expecting you to show up and do everything the way that you said you were going to do it. And so if you don't do it that way, then all of a sudden you're just not going to hit it.
Yeah. What's interesting, because I as a business owner, you get to see things from a different perspective. There's this self-development, there's this growth that you go through once you are on the other side of the road. Because as a consumer, it's easy to be like, oh, this food tasted like shit, or this program that I paid for was crap, or whatever it is. And go in there and just give a 1-star rating, and then give a very detailed outline of your experience.
Yep.
But then when you're on the other side of it and you're receiving that instead of giving it, you get to see and experience things from a different perspective that is really hard to comprehend unless you've been there before. It's quite literally the equivalent of giving parental advice as a non-parent versus somebody who has kids. It's like day
Mm-hmm.
and night. And you no matter what you think unless you've experienced it, you can't be qualified to be able to give that. You know what I mean? So it's interesting being on this side of it. Anytime that I go to give as a consumer, that I go to give, like even when we go out to eat, just as an example, if I have a bad experience, like I still will, my minimum is 20%. Like I still will tip 20% regardless for every time that I go out. But then I can give like feedback. I can be like, hey, this was my experience. Sometimes I'll talk to a manager. Sometimes I'll just write it on the back of the receipt and just say, hey, I hope you're having a better day.
Yep.
And give
Katie
some
and I,
feedback on there. But or I'll give a 5-star review, but then I'll give like feedback on what could have improved.
Katie and
Like
I
that's how
talked
I
about
see
it the
things
other
now.
day offline, and she was saying like what she looks for is people to be like kind of bubbly and energetic and to bring like a good vibe. And I was saying like I don't necessarily look for that, but that's because like I came from the blue collar world, and a lot of the work that we do can be grueling, right? Like those people are not necessarily like bubbly by nature. A lot of them, like me, have like inherent back pain, and they have things that bother them on a day-to-day basis. But I look for the amount of effort that they do. Like, did they really leave it on the floor? Did they do all the little details? Like, is every little thing tidied up? Like, is it to the best of their ability? Especially given the capacity that they have, then yeah, then that if that's the case, then that to me is that 11 to 12 out of 10 experience that you're really looking for, because like I said, there's some days it's real hot outside. I'm not that bubbly when it's 105 degrees outside, guys. It's real,
You're
real hard
not.
to be.
That's so weird.
I I
Not
know.
everybody loves being in hell.
I know. I mean, I thought so too, especially when you got to wear like boots and jeans to protect yourself from, the things that are swinging around and you don't want to get yourself hurt. You would think everybody would just enjoy needing to drink a gallon of water a day.
How do you, as a business owner, how do you create a company culture? How does your leadership change and you create a company culture that is based on serving the customer at an 11 out of 10 caliber?
That's a
Like
really good.
how does that affect you as a leader?
So what I do with my guys is we walk through every single thing that we do, and I'm explaining it to them as I'm doing it. Like I'm doing it with them. Like you and I are standing shoulder to shoulder, and if you're doing it and it's wrong, I'm not like Jesse, you did this wrong. I'm like, hey, hold on, let me show you something. Let me maybe show you how to make it easier on yourself. Let me show you the right way to do it. Let me show you how to make this more effective and more efficient. Or like if we're faced with options, and even if they're not good options, I will tell them outright. We have option A, and option A is shit. We have option B, and option B is shit. Pick one. You're gonna have to walk through it either way. But like I want to see your decision making capabilities. And sometimes they'll be like, well, does it really matter? And then I'll give them the outline of it, right? Like option A is maybe we take this 200 pounds and we lug it and we go the short route, but the short route involves us lifting it over an 18-inch chain wall. Or option B is you go the long route and you have to drag it through all this tall grass, and then you're just wearing yourself out because you're dragging it behind you, right? And they're looking at me and they're like, well, those both sound bad. It's like, yeah, it is bad. They both suck. You have to get it
Yeah.
done either way, though. It doesn't matter. Like, you're only here for 30 minutes. Like, just embrace the suck for a little bit. It's just like when the rain would come down, they would all get these big mopey faces and be like, oh, like, aren't we going to stop anytime soon? Like, nope, buddy. We still got like 8 more stops to go. Like, let's get used to it because you're not getting any wetter. Like, you're already soaked. What are you going to do? I told you to come
Right.
prepared. You didn't bring a rain jacket.
Hmm.
Like, the faster you get this shit done, guess what? The faster we can get in the truck, I can put the heater on. But
Yep.
until
Yep.
then, like I'm in it with you. I'm not sitting in the truck watching you like on the radio or on the phone, like, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. Like, no, dude, I'm right there with you. And if anything, I usually take the suckiest, most dangerous parts because I've done them so many times. I don't want you to have that level of risk.
Mm.
So it's leading by example. Vince Lombardi says that he's leading by example isn't a way to lead, it's the only way to lead.
I like that, man. Lead by example, leading from the
Yeah.
front.
Yeah, I'll explain to them what the different roles are, right? Like this role might involve the hydraulic splitter. This role might involve you just using the dolly. This role might involve you, bagging stuff. This role might involve the chainsaw. But guess what? Like I'm gonna pick the most dangerous one. That's usually the saw. Because there's enough variables in there that something could go wrong. But I've been doing it long enough. I'm not worried about the variables. I could pick up a saw right now, and go outside. I'd be fine. Right? And I tell them that and I show them that. It's like, look, dude, I'm gonna take the dangerous shit. I want you to do this and do this safely as if nobody's watching you, because effectively most of the time nobody is. And you have to have your own safety has to be paramount to you, right? Like it can't be paramount to me. I have to take care of myself. You have to take care of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's a big one, is just leading by example, kind of taking charge of the hard things first. And I would say also giving them some level of responsibility back, right? Like they're responsible for themselves. They're not responsible for anybody else. They're just responsible for themselves and the equipment in their charge. And if they can take care of those things, and it only gives them one or two things to really check off the boxes for. That's all they have to do. Don't break the equipment. Don't break a bone. Simple. Like, don't cause an ER visit. We don't need that.
Love that, bro.
Yeah, dude. It's everything.
I think what do you see from your perspective? A lot of people get wrong when they're coming from, because we all 99% of us, we all came from the we call it the W-2 mindset, or I don't know how to word it, but we all kind of came from that side of things, right? Not all
Yep.
of us had a dad that handed us $1 million to go do something with. So when it comes to people that decide they want to go build a business and they want to be an entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that you see a lot of people bring over and have the hardest time with? Maybe even especially when it comes to leadership. So you got people who've been in supervisor positions, they've been a boss, or they have a boss. Whether that boss is good or bad, who's to say? But they take those qualities or those characteristics that they've seen or experienced themselves, and they bring them over, and then they wonder why their business is floundering.
You're
So what are some of the
responsible.
things that you've seen a lot of people mess up on when it comes to making that pivot?
You're not just responsible, you're accountable for all of it. And even if it wasn't you by design, it's still your responsibility, right? Like, there's only five major departments in pretty much any business. There's sales, there's marketing, there's operations, there's fulfillment, and there's lead generation. And I specifically separated those five the way I did for a reason, right? Like, because if you're not getting enough leads, it doesn't make sense to do any marketing. If you're not doing any marketing, you have nobody to command sales. If you don't have sales, you don't have orders. So you don't have operations, you don't have fulfillment. Like, you have to have all five. And it's really, really hard to do all five. So you have to be willing to take charge and say, like, hey, this is my ship. I'm running it. Regardless of where we are, there is no balance. It's harmony, and you have to you're gonna have to move your time and attention to those different buckets routinely. You're going to have to shift, and you're going to be more heavily in sales. You're going to be more heavily in marketing. You're going to be more heavily in operations at different points in the game. You just have to keep pushing, keep going, and understand that everything is a lesson. And if you do it more than once, it's a lesson you haven't learned. Looks like Naomi's got a question. Let's bring her up. Let's see what's up, Naomi? What you got?
It actually wasn't a question. I just wanted to express gratitude for being in this room because
Yeah, of course.
as someone who is relatively new to the real estate scene, and by relative, I mean like a year and a half in, um, and I listen to you guys, and it just helps me to appreciate how much more I know now that I didn't know before. But it also, what I've recognized is that you guys speak so high level, like even without recognizing it. For instance, with that 200-pound burden story that you were just referencing, and you were saying, well, you could do it this way, the shorter route, a couple more obstacles, or you can go this long way. But what I heard when I listened to that was there is a more efficient way of doing it, right? Like very rarely are two options truly equal. There's usually a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you talk about leading from the front and embracing the suck and leading by example, what you're saying is that there is a best option for maximum efficiency. And I
Mm-hmm.
know this because I've done this thing, I'm tried and true in this thing. And so that kind of tied into what Jesse was saying about that W-2 mindset. That W-2 mindset isn't just happenstance, it was conditioned. When if you know a little bit about the history of education system and Rockefeller and how he wanted that bell to ring to let you know when it's time to go to the next class, when it's time to go to lunch, when it's time to go home for the day, when it's time to start the day, right? And that was that same bell that they would hear when they went to go work in the factories. They were already conditioned to respond to these cues, if you will. So what you're doing when you give the people these options is you're essentially giving them permission to think outside the box, right? To not have to be told when to do this and when to do that. Like let's just be for real, bro. This is the better way to do it. This is going to shorten our
Mhm.
workday. This is, like you say, going to get us back to the warm truck faster.
Yep.
So
And
I just wanted to tie those two things together. It's just I love being in these rooms. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, I think it's that. I think it's also understanding that there are times to take charge too, right? Like not everything is democratic. Not every moment of the day am I like, hey, no, Naomi, would you like option A or option B? Because I know if I give you too many options, then you fall into the paradox of choice, and then you're gonna be like, well, I don't know. Like maybe we should. And it's like, no. Hey, get out the truck, back me up. As soon as I'm done, as soon as the truck kills, open the gates, like get the hand trucks out, let's go.
And that sounds like balance to me, right? Because you're not a dictator. I will give you options when it's appropriate because I want to give you thought-provoking questions. I want you to use that muscle. The brain is a muscle. You got to use it if you want it to get stronger. But
Yep.
at the same time, being at the helm of this ship, you got to make executive decisions too. Like I can't play the monkey business, wait till you figure it out today. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I'm under time constraints where I got to do what I got to do what I got to do. So you're showing them what leadership looks like. And part of that is taking into account the people that you're dealing with and meeting them where they are and trying to help them grow, you know, on this journey at the same time, not slowing down yourself. Because sometimes you be around slower people, it can mess your brain up. Okay. So you don't want to be, you don't want them to dull your senses because you're trying to meet
Yep.
them where they're at. You're still taking the lead when it's necessary to show them what it really needs to be looking like.
That, and if you're in a leadership position, you possess skill sets that they don't. So they're not going to see everything that the way that you see it. Therefore, you need to make those executive decisions. And
Exactly.
I'll give you all a big mindset shift for me, right? Like in my business, I have a truck and it's a big truck. It's an F-350 and it has a stick shift. Not everybody can drive a stick shift. We were always towing a big trailer. The trailer would be up to 16,000 pounds at capacity. Now, towing a trailer is a skill set in and of itself. Driving a stick shift is a skill set in and of itself. Combining the two is an intersection of a skill set which very few possess, right? So therefore, if I wanted to hire somebody to replace myself that had the intersection of both those skill sets, I was looking at an expensive employee for something that couldn't really somebody that probably wouldn't have the same level of care that I did. They probably would have to have like almost CDL level training. So what's the solution here? Well, the solution here is if you go get a bigger truck that is like a commercial truck that anybody with a class D or E license can drive, it shortens the training gap because it only takes a little bit of time for your hippocampus, which is your spatial awareness, to adjust to driving a bigger truck, as opposed to when you're trying to like drive with trailers and shift gears and do all these other things. That takes weeks, if not months, to really like get the hang of. And the difference in those would be like hiring a $25 to $30 an hour employee to replace myself, or I could just buy another truck with twice the capacity and hire somebody at $16, $17 an hour because they didn't need the same intersection of skills that I needed. And I see that all the time. Like in my ops consulting right now, they came to me, somebody came to me and they were like, hey, I want a project manager and client care. And I said, which one? They said both. And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, you're trying to hire a unicorn. You're not going to find a unicorn. They're a unicorn for a reason. So you need to hire one and then hire the other. But pick the highest fulcrum point, pick the best leverage point for you right now and hire that person first.
So what I just heard there, I feel like I'm a translator at this point. So what I just heard was something that I recently it corroborates something I recently heard, which is that a good leader, an effective leader, has the ability to analyze an individual and size them up and see what their strengths is and what position they need to play. Like you said, you realize you didn't need someone with the intersection of those skills. You just needed a bigger truck. And that,
Hmm.
that resonates with me because I come from a logistics background as well. And I used to dispatch for 18 wheelers. And so some loads, some brokers ran partial loads, right?
Yep.
And instead of paying a truck to go across the country with just that one partial, they realized they could just put a bunch of partials on a bigger truck. And now you've got that one driver that you've got to pay at that particular rate, as opposed to having a bunch of different trucks running a bunch of different loads. So yeah,
Hmm.
totally makes sense.
Yeah, I grew up with operations and logistics too. My family had a business. My dad was the ops manager we had a French bread bakery. He planned all the routes. He maintained all the trucks. He managed all the inventory. And then similarly, I worked in warehouses growing up. So I used to help them. Like I was the one on the forklift that loaded the trucks, and we would stage it and then load the trucks and unload the trucks so that everything was prepared for them because we knew their routes. That way, obviously what's last on the truck comes off first. That way they don't have to go try to dig all the way to the front of the truck to take off the first stop first. Put it in reverse order, make it easier. So yeah, but no, Naomi, that was a really good point that you made, and I'm glad you came up here to translate because I do sometimes speak in like higher levels, and I don't always realize where I'm at or where other people are at.
Yeah, like even with that the little snippet you just said about the order in which you load the truck, you might think like, okay, I I gotta go to these 5 stops. So the first stop I'll put on first, and the second stop I'll put on second. But what you'll realize is when you pull up, that first stop is at, what I'm saying, the nose of the truck, and now you gotta go through all those pallets, and it's actually going to cost more because there's a cost incurred with unloading pallets and having to put them back on if it ain't your stuff, if it's not your stuff. So, yeah, it seems like common sense, but it really isn't. You know what I mean? It's actually pretty high levels, but it's easy to learn, right? It's just all these little nuances, all these little puzzle pieces, I like to call them, that come together and make the big picture. So being in rooms like this and having these just like one-off conversations, like somebody is going to load their truck one day in the right order based off of this conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like it's um because once it's out there in the ethosphere, somebody's gonna watch this later, maybe somebody in the room is about to load their truck with stuff that needs to go to several different places, right? So but yeah,
Well, and
I see why you're successful. I see why you're doing the big one.
I'll give you one more snippet that you can probably translate for us, Naomi. So one of the things that I also learned from running that setup, right, from having the truck and the trailer, was that we were maxing out the capabilities of the truck, and so things were breaking often. And so a lot of it also comes down to, do you have the right tools? Because if you're using everything to capacity and everything is at full capacity, throttle wide open all the time, guess what? It's going to break. Is it easier and more cost effective for you to switch to something that's a little bit bigger that you maybe haven't filled those shoes yet? For us, it was, I bought a 26-foot box truck, which I know you're familiar with if you were
Mhm,
dispatching for 18 wheelers. So I
mhm.
bought a box truck. And what difference does that make? Well, we went from being able to carry 6 pallets to 12. And that truck is actually built for that kind of load. So it doesn't need brakes every 3 months. It doesn't need um oil changes, but every 10,000 miles as opposed to every 5,000 miles. So are you actually buying and utilizing the proper tools to keep things moving effectively?
Yeah. And so in that situation, because like, when you talk about the intersection of two skill sets that might be necessary for certain jobs, hiring a driver that has some mechanical skills comes in handy too. Because them tow trucks for those big trucks is crazy.
It
$1,000 just to
is.
hook it up. You know what I mean? So it's not like towing a regular truck. But having a driver that knows how to use a wrench, you know what I'm saying, and replace some of them hoses, that roadside assistance gonna come out and charge an arm and a leg for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out which roles you could find those intersections, I think is one of the takeaways I'm gonna take from this meeting already.
Yeah, and like I said, just make sure too, if you're looking for intersections of skills, that they make sense, right? Like you don't necessarily need to hire a project manager that understands marketing. You need to understand a project manager that has intersections of skills within that, or you need to understand, you need to hire a marketing person that understands both organic content as well as paid content, you know, but you don't need a marketing manager that understands sales in really well. You need a marketing manager that understands marketing.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
I appreciate you coming up, Naomi. That was really good.
No, thank you.
That was good. I just love here. Just so thank you.
There are a lot of you superstars that I secretly watch from the sideline. You know, Jesse's definitely one. And I remember when I first started coming, I feel like it's been a long time, but when I look back, it's only just been maybe 3 months or so when I started being active in Jesse's community, coming into his lives and all of this type of stuff. And I was just like, my brain was just constantly, and it just made me think like, wow, this is the free sauce. You know what I mean? Like what's it looking like in that cohort? You know what I mean? People coming out
Mm.
crushing 10-year goals in 12 months and stuff like that. Like it's a lot going on. So but I am pretty proactive and resourceful woman. And so because I don't necessarily need things broken down to molecules, if I hear it enough times, um, and then I'm hearing it from different people, and I'm like, okay, there's obviously something there that I need to. If I don't understand it thoroughly, there's something there I need to further look into. But there's some things that after a while, your internal BS filter will be able to, you'll hear some gurus talking about some stuff, and it'll be like, oh yeah, that's so like, you know, that's so old information. Or you can, you know what I'm saying? You can kind of like, you can tell what's thumb on the pulse kind of information, people that are actively doing the thing right now versus people that are talking about what worked 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so being that the kind of people that are in your community, Jesse, the community to spend off from, um, these are people that are actually doing the thing and they're teaching you in real time. You're seeing them grow in real time. I'm watching Jesse's influence grow in real time, and so it's really just an honor because for someone like me who's starting on the ground floor, I can't tell you enough how exponentially it shortens the learning curve for us coming behind you. So just hold the door open. Thank you for holding the door open. Continue to hold the door open, guys, because there are going to be some sharpshooters sitting in the sidelines, maybe not even with their camera on, but they're hearing this stuff, and it's like beast mode activated.
Oh,
Thank you.
we got a whole room full of sharpshooters.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just, again, with the gratitude, it's an honor to watch you gentlemen grow and do the things that you're able to accomplish.
I appreciate that, Naomi. And Jesse,
Thank you.
I'd want to ask you too, like, what do you think about all this, right? Because you've built several companies and you've placed a lot of people, and you didn't just go out and just grab people willy-nilly, like, oh, this is just Joe Schmo off the street. Like, they'd be a good marketing manager. This would be a good TC.
Yeah, I like you guys, I got really intentional with just getting around the right people and getting in the right information because everybody I think there's a lot of people who waste their time. There's There's a lot of people who spend a lot of time just connecting with anybody and everybody simply because they think that that's what they need to be doing. And a lot of times they do that because they don't have clarity on what it is they're actually trying to do or what they need to get there. So I put a mastermind on back in July or June, and held this big mastermind in Vegas, and it was awesome. And one of the first questions that I asked everybody in the first hour, I said, I want everybody to kind of look around. Everybody look to your left. Everybody look to your right. What do you guys see? Everybody turn around and look behind you. What do you see? Everyone threw out, just different names and words to describe what they saw and felt. And I said, I'm looking for one word here, and it starts with an O. And somebody's like, opportunity. I said, yes, that's it. I said, I want you guys to look around this room right now. And I want you to think about how many other events and masterminds and things that you guys have been to. How many other people have you met? When you came there, what did you do while you were there? What did you do when you left? I asked, how many people have you guys talked to? This was in June, so halfway through the year. So over the last 6 months, I said, how many people have you guys talked to? How many people have you networked with? How many people have you slid into their DMs or jumped on a phone call or jumped into a Zoom? And I got all sorts of answers, man. A few hundred, 600. Asked somebody recently that question. They said like 2,400. Like, gosh, damn, you've talked to 2,400 people. And I said, no. How much money have you made from those relationships? And you can kind of see some light bulbs going off and everyone kind of seeing and understanding where I'm going with it. And I was like, dude, you know what? We were out last night and there was 12 of us that went out the night prior to this event. And we're just walking around Vegas, and of those 12 people, it's kind of doing similar to what I did when I popped in here. We just kind of start asking questions, just figuring out where everybody is, what they need, what they're working on. And there was just a group of 12 of us. And then the next day I'm telling this story, and I'm like, I got to talk to 12 of you guys, and one of you guys has something that one of you other individuals need. And there's only 12 of us. And you guys had the opportunity to have this conversation last night. And you like somehow nobody, like you didn't figure this out. How is it that I figured this out simply just by having an intentional conversation and just shutting the hell up and just listening? And I was like, I need you guys to look in this room because there's nothing but opportunity. I said, some of you guys, your business has been on hold for 3 months because you don't know how to underwrite a property. There's somebody in here that can solve that problem. This can be solved by the end of the day. Some of you guys need money. Some of you guys in here are lenders. Like your business, you haven't done shit. You haven't made money the last 6 months. You've talked to a lot of people, but you haven't been intentional with those conversations. So what I ended up doing was, when I first started, I was just jumping into rooms and Zooms on phone calls with anybody and everybody. And now I don't do that. I'm very protective of my time. I know what I'm trying to do, and I know who I need to do that with. I actually had somebody hit me up today about them needing help with like closing deals or something like that. And I told him, I was like, dude, like I'm gonna be honest with you, like I can't commit. Like I don't want to let you down. Like I would be a good fit to help you close these deals. Like I don't have the time to be able to dedicate to that. And if I committed to you right now, I'd be letting you down. So I don't want to let you down. So when you know what you're after, it's all about the things that you say no to include the people that you bring on. I've already been there and done that. I've already brought people on. And then I've spent all my time, energy, and effort in my business training those individuals. And when that becomes where all of my time, energy, and effort is being spent, is training those individuals, then that doesn't leave any time for me left to grow a business. And so when it comes to hiring and bringing on individuals and being a leader, I bring people on who can already solve the problem. And then I allow them the room to grow in that position. I allow them the room to fail. And you have to. And at the same time, you as a leader, you have to be vulnerable enough to fail in front of them. Just as you need to give the people on your team grace to fail and room to grow, they also need to understand that they need to be giving you that grace to fail as a leader and to grow. And when you have that type of mutual respect for each other and accountability for each other, it's just the neatest thing ever. You pour into your people, and your leader now becomes to your role as a leader now becomes to serve the people in your charge. You grow the people, and the people grow the business.
Yeah.
And it's the neatest thing to just let that whole thing work, and you just get the fuck out of the way. You stay in your zone of genius, and you're the talent in the business. Everything else, you get the fuck out of the way. You let them do what they were brought in here to do. You let them execute in their zone of genius. And it's the coolest thing in the world.
And it also allows you to take on all kinds of new projects that you wouldn't have been able to do before. That was a really cool experience we had. We had gotten called a couple of years ago for a resort actually called us, and they wanted us to build bonfires for this big event. We had to build like 6 of them. It was a pretty good sized contract, $1,000 a piece. So $6,000 contract through the month of December. And they'd asked us, they're like, yeah, can you kind of come up with like these schematics and whatever? And like, we want it to be built, it's got to be this tall, it's got to be on top of the levee. So logistically, like getting it up there is going to be a little bit challenging. And I told him, I said, yeah, I had a guy on staff at the time who by trade was a carpenter. And I said, he was just working with me for some side, really for a good income for the winter time because he was slow. And I accepted the job not knowing how we were going to do it or what we were going to do. But like you said, Jesse, because I was willing to get the fuck out of the way and I knew what my zone of genius was, I knew what his was. I was like, yeah, we can do it. And then I went to him. We drew up a plan. Mm-hmm. We got all the necessary tools. We went out there and we did it. We built all 6 of them. The first 2 took us a full day. The second 2 took us half a day. The third 2 took us 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing what you can do when you get your systems and processes down and you're willing to trust your people and let them do.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. It's funny because if somebody would have given me that advice, if somebody would have said, Jesse, like, if you really want to make a lot of money, like you'd need to be focusing, like stop worrying about what this property is going to, comp for, what the underwriting is, or how to negotiate this. Like, you really want to build a company that's making a lot of money, you need to work on your leadership skills. And it was really interesting because even as an Air Force trained leader, I spent 15 years leading what I thought leadership was and what I think a lot of people think leadership is compared to what it actually is, in my opinion, is a day and night difference. Like, I can sit here and use the word leadership. You guys need to be a leader. But your perspective on what you think a leadership or a leader is versus what it actually is, and the things that you need to be concerned about is not at all what you thought it was. And when you get that kind of clarity and you can double down on that, my goodness, it's the coolest thing in the world, man.
It's one of the 2 biggest mindset shifts I think I've gotten from you, Jesse. I came to you last week and I asked you, I said, when I go to Zooms, when I go to these local RIAs and City Hall and wherever I go, I always get people coming up to me because I'm working on this Gary project. what can I do, Naomi? How can I help? What can I? And so I came to Jesse and I said, Jesse, I got a lot of people that come to me and say, Naomi, I want to be on your team. I said, how do you quickly assess what someone's zone of genius is so that you can delegate a task to them? And he said, you ever been in one of those companies where they've got like this one superstar employee and this person can open the place, close the place. She knows how to do everybody's job. She knows how to keep everybody corralled and on task. But everybody else under her is kind of just like a minion. You know what I mean? Like if she don't tell them what to do, they're not going to be real efficient. Well, instead of having that one superstar in your company, why not just hire all superstars? In other words, instead of trying to assess their zone of genius, ask them, because they should already know. They should have already had their self-actualization moment, if you will. Like, I know I can stand 10 toes down that I'm good in this, 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 and this. And if they don't know, don't make them feel bad for it. Tell them, ask their family, ask their friends, people that know them well. What is it that you do, that I do, that, you know what I'm saying, I do naturally? Like, I don't have to, you know what I mean? It's not a square peg in a round hole situation. I do this naturally. And if they don't know, and if they're not resourceful enough to find out, then that's not the person. Because you will be herding kittens, so to speak, if you don't get the right people in position. And you're not a therapist, so it's not for you to try to like sit down and Dr. Phil and Ayana fix their life. None of that stuff. They need to know what they need to know, because you're hiring them to be the solution. You're hiring them to fix the problem in your business, to take something off of your plate, which means that if you've been sitting back not getting your wholesaling business off the ground because you don't know what CRM, and then you hire someone that's supposed to be your ops manager, is supposed to know these things, and they're asking you, what CRM do you prefer? Like, no, that's not what we're doing. I paid you to know what CRM is best. You should have, played with a few of them by now. So that was a shifter for me. And then the other big one was the networking with intentionality, because I bought into a really good community. Okay. Tons of amazing people, all the information that you could shake a stick at. Like, I mean, several fire hoses to drink from. And to someone who was thirsting for knowledge, despite my best efforts, I still got the shiny object syndrome. And part of it, I think, was tied to the fact that the instructions in the beginning weren't clear. And what I mean by that is, I remember when I first got into that community, they said, make 25 friends your first week. By this time next week, you should have 25 new friends that you could do deals with, and da 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 da. You need to meet at least 25 people, because this community had 10,000 people in it. You should be able to find 25 easy enough. But what they didn't say was that you should be networking with intentionality, or at the very least, because that might be a tall order for someone completely new, maybe say, be able to articulate what your skills are and what you see at the moment as being your vision in real estate. Like, why are you getting into it? What are you trying to accomplish? Right? Outside of the avatar stage, like, what are you actually trying to do in your business? And be able to tell someone what it is that you've got prior experience in. Because no matter what field you come from, you've got a skill set. If you've never had a job, you're a parent, you've developed some skills. So just talk about what you know. Like, I just felt like there should have been, in hindsight, I feel like there could have been a little bit more direction with that, other than get 25 people, because I was like, oh, I could do that easily, right? I had 50 people by the next week. I had some of the most amazing conversations. I mean, hours. I was on the phone with other visionaries, and I'm a visionary. Okay, so I didn't know how combustible that was. I'm talking about, we on there, we talking about all these plans for the future. No real like way to get it done because we need an integrator like nobody's business.
Yeah, we're on
Okay.
the runaway train.
Man, I mean, like we both by the end of the call, we were like, okay, I think we need to take a nap. Like we needed to take a nap. The brains were just, but it was a great experience. Okay. But did it move the needle in my business? Not one iota. Did I still run around in circles chasing my tail for a bit and accidentally end up in a partnership with somebody wholesaling from prison and tried to steal my deals? Did I still come across a bad leader in the group that would have taken more equity in the deal than he was warranted? I mean, I still went through all the things. So when Jesse talked about networking with intentionality, it was like a light bulb went off. Because now, if I go to a meetup and I meet another mother who homeschools her kids, I know right off the bat this conversation could easily go on for hours. But I'm gonna put a bookmark here. Hey, sis, I think we should have a play date sometime. Let's exchange numbers. There's some other people in here that I need to meet though. Because I've already met you and I love you already. Okay. So let's go ahead and buzz around like some bees and get, let's go pollinate some more flowers. I'm not going to sit there and talk to you all day, honey. So, those two things I know for a fact, and I wish there was a way that I could calculate it in money, but I know that those two things have easily saved me millions of dollars in untold hours. Because when people come to me and say, hey, where can I plug in? What can I do for you? Da, 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 da. I would be thinking, well, this person is hungry. I got to find a role for them. Let me see. So now I'm spinning my wheels trying to figure out what they would be best at. And that is not, I mean, it could be considered a zone of genius because but no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not, there to psychoanalyze your situation and help you overcome childhood trauma. Unless we, doing this while we're in motion. You know what I'm saying? Like let's tackle these demons in motion. But we're not gonna sit here and get stagnant in this moment, and I gotta get you out of the dark in order to bring you into the light, and then we can no, because then that's doing a disservice to myself and the people that I could be helping exponentially shorten their learning curve. Because there's a place for them. There's somebody that's doing nothing but talking about mindset all day long, and you just got to know where you need to be. So yeah, lots of good nuggets that I've gotten from you, Mr. Jesse Stanton. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll give you another one, Naomi, I got from Jesse.
Okay.
You're not missing anything to do the bigger deals. Everybody thinks that like you got to have all these pieces to go after, like the big RV parks, the big multifamilies, whatever, that you got to start wholesaling small. You got to start with single family. You're not missing anything. You might not be up on your vocabulary. That's the only thing that's different, right? Like sometimes, like with multifamily, they talk about like IRR and ARR, and they talk like RV parks talk about NOI, CapEx, cap rates. But once you understand the vocabulary, you're not actually missing anything. In fact, if anything, it takes the same amount of time, the same amount of effort, same amount of energy to do the big deals as it does to do the small deals.
I got that from him too. Look, I'm trying to get a 113 unit extended stay motel right now, Jesse. And when I tell you I am failing for it, I've had like 2 of the 5 Zoom meetings that I've scheduled so far, talking to hoteliers and people in the multifamily space to try to help me with guiding me on this mission here. But I would have never, and this would literally be my first acquisition. This would be my first acquisition. And I have a really, really good fix and flip opportunity under contract right now, that instead of just trying to wholesale it, even though there's only a week between, well, not even a week, because next Friday is the auction, I got to do something with it. I'm not going to put the seller in a precarious situation, but I just got it under contract yesterday. And there's so much meat on the bone. I'm like, I couldn't possibly like screw this up. I'm thinking like, should I try to raise capital and fix and flip this thing myself? Because I know that I could buy this thing creatively. I don't have to pay off that whole $55,000 in debt. She's 12,000 behind, and she only pays $430 a month. This house is worth $200,000, and it probably needs $40,000 worth of rehab. It's only 850 square feet. I think it's project manager, but I'm like, yeah, but I put up drywall, I've done demo. And I'm like, okay, but I know a lot of contractors and I know a lot of agents and I know a lot of brokers. And it's like, so yeah, Jesse is that friend that'll have you believing in yourself, and you're just like doing all kinds of things outside of the comfort zone. And you're like, I know I'm not doing all these things right, but I just keep getting in the rooms and I keep talking to people, and the momentum just be momentum. And if neither one of these things go the way that I want to, like if I end up just wholesaling this one for 10, 15,000, and I, if nothing else, doing the due diligence of what it would look like to acquire a motel that's actually being ran as multifamily. Okay. It nets 500 to 650 a year if you just leave it the way it is. But there's a little bit of value add potential. Anywho, I'm in Gary, Indiana, 30 minutes outside of Chicago, the hometown of Michael Jackson and so many other amazing people, the crossroads of America, and the city is poised for a comeback.
Well, Naomi, let's connect because maybe I have a solution for your fix and flip if you really want to do it.
Okay,
Because
let's talk.
me and Megan, and I can't say her last name, it starts with a W.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no, we don't. I know my
we're going to be helping other women do their get into general contracting licenses and do fix and flips and buy and holds to help other women. So we might be able to work something out
That
because
sounds dope.
we are currently looking for a fix and flip.
Sounds like a winner. Okay, I'm texting you right now, Pansy.
All right.
Naomi,
Cool.
when you get your extended stay under contract, bring it over because we were just helping some borrowers get a refinance on a hotel.
Nice. Okay.
Woo!
Look at God on a Sunday. I went to service
Mm.
today. I prayed up covered. But no, how do I reach you, Adam? What's your favorite way of being contacted?
I'll put it in the chat for you. You can just text me.
Perfect.
Because if I
Oh,
say
that's
it out
perfect.
loud, everybody on
I heard him
YouTube's
say
gonna be
text.
texting me too.
I was
Alrighty.
wondering, I was like, man, I found Adam on OnlyFans actually. I was wondering if he was gonna put his link in there, but he went with the phone number instead.
Well, anybody on this Zoom is gonna snatch your number, so
Well, they should. Everybody here should text me. Like I said, just
It's an
don't
intimate
don't
group,
go.
so.
Yeah, don't go to the sneaky link, like Jesse said.
Yeah, just introduce him with feet pics.
Yeah, I don't need that.
That's how I text Adam.
Now,
but
Adam,
I
have
have
you ever?
cute feet, and recently my team at community camp won because of we were taking feet pics.
Oh Lord.
So we won another visit to community camp next year because
there
we
you
had
go.
to do a scavenger hunt. And instead of doing the normal pictures where everybody's in the picture, we did our feet. It was my team's idea. I was just like, whatever. I was beat up, so I couldn't argue. I had wrecked myself the day before on the boat. So I was like, I'm not arguing. You guys do your thing. And they knew what they were doing because we won. So not complaining.
What were you
Well,
gonna
there
say,
you go.
Naomi?
I'm sorry, you say what, sir?
What were you gonna say? I thought
Oh,
you had a question for me. This is-
I was going to say, I think he
Adam
froze.
good.
us again.
Yep, the 23 weeks in a row we don't have a single issue, and then all of a sudden Jesse comes in, man, and wrecks the whole Zoom.
Yeah, that we're about on par then.
Jesse brought his Alaska
No.
Wi-Fi with him.
Yeah, Brandon and Devin know.
I was asking if you've ever acquired multifamily or anything like an extended stay before.
So my mom spent 30 years in hotels, so I know all the ins and outs of hotels. She was a director of sales for mostly for Hilton brands, but also for like Marriott's and Independence as well. I have not acquired them, but I know a pretty good amount about the ins and outs of them and what you would need to do to get one financed.
Okay. Yeah, this was a little bit different. And so I don't want to take up Jesse's Zoom unless he's okay with us talking about it a little bit here.
Oh, you
This
guys are
one's
good, man. This is where I get to learn too. This is for all of us. This is
okay.
this is
So
Adam's Zoom. This is my Zoom.
okay, let's do it then. Okay, so this is a different situation in the sense that it's being ran almost like a multifamily. And by that I mean a lot of the residents there have been there for like years. Like I'm talking 5 years, 10 years. Okay. And these people are super loyal to Mr. Mosley, who's the owner of this thing. And the owner, well, I haven't spoken with him directly. I am a DTS all day long, but this is on the market and I've not been able to navigate these people to get to the owner. But I do know that he lives in the owner's suite of the motel. So I might stake the place out one day. I don't know. But anywho, I've spoken with the agent and I've spoken with another guy who's like super intertwined with the fabric of the market here. And he does a lot of investing here. And it's on market for 7 mil. He says he knows he's trying to sell it for 5.5. Okay. But at the end of the day, when I look at the numbers, it looks like it needs to be closer to 3.5, if for no other reason. 3.5 for at the max, if for no other reason than all of the deferred maintenance. Okay.
Hmm.
Because it's a 1960s build, and you just got to expect that all of those rooms are going to have to get turned. When I've
Hmm.
spoken with the agent and the close friend who he's been working with, they get very they don't like the conversation around value add, okay, because they see that as you kicking out the current tenants. And a lot of these people, you know, it's kind of like a last chance kind of situation because they don't make the 3 times the rental income that's needed to get a traditional rental. And when I say that there's, it's not as much value add as normally you would want to see in a situation, they're paying $1,400 a month for a studio. $1,400 a month could get you a 3 bedroom, 1 bath out here. Okay. And so it's kind of already maxed out in terms of where you can be with the rent. And then as far as value add, what I see is the biggest opportunities for value add, and it's typically value add is considered raising the rents, but
Hmm.
there are a few thousand square feet of space both on the main floor and in the basement that are not used. Okay.
Hmm.
So I, because a lot of the residents don't have cars, I'm thinking, leasing that space to a grocery store or even a restaurant. There used to be a church in one of those spaces. There used to be a bar in one of those restaurant bar kind of thing in one of those spaces. So I'm thinking the biggest how do you make enough money to justify eventually turning those units? I like the property because it's close to the lakefront. Okay, so it's like a 2 mile walk path to the lakefront. It's in the nicer part of Gary, um, the Miller area, the Miller Beach area of Gary. And so this is where the $500,000 $1 million houses are on this side of the street. But if you go on the other side, it's a whole like this street that it's on is literally like the dividing line between the hoity-toity and the regular folk, right? And so it's in a good location in terms of restaurants and bars and all of that type of stuff. It's also though where a lot of truckers frequent because there's a lot of parking spots over there for the truckers. And they're up until about a week ago, there was also a gentleman's club there that would, obviously attract the wrong kind of crowd. And about eight
Jesse's
years
favorite.
ago, about 8 years ago, they were trying to shut the place down for drugs and prostitution, but they haven't had any of those issues in the last few years. And most of the people there, like I say, I saw an article, a news clip from about 8 years ago when the owner was in financial trouble because it was up for auction and he had to file for bankruptcy to keep the place. There were these passionate testimonies of the people, like, this single dad who had no idea where he was going to have to go with his kids if they had gotten displaced and all of that kind of thing. So it's a very tight knit ecosystem of people, in apartment life. My question is it, you consider this a risky purchase when you when value add isn't like the number, play here, and they're already kind of out they're maxed out kind of on what the rent is. It's $350 a week, 14 a month. And so if we kept it as it is, you can't really raise the rent because, like I said, it's just kind of maxed out in that way. So, and if you talk to the owner about turning the apartments, that'll freak them out. So I'm cool with not having that part of the conversation. I think that the way to acquire this is to lean into the fact that we're going to further his vision for the place and not try to move any. See what sir. But I think the long-term play. Or is $500,000 net enough? Like, yeah, I guess that's my question. Like, if there's not an immediate value add play, do you consider too risky?
I think it depends.
Well, while we're waiting for Adam, let me ask you, have you posed this question to the agent?
No, so the agent is not that well versed,
That's
I
okay.
don't think, in
So
this.
the
So
point that I'm trying to make here is, like, even when I talk to a seller, I don't know much about multifamily or anything like that. I'll be diving more into that next year. So Adam's the guy to ask on this, but just from a strategic or negotiating standpoint, that's exactly what I would do, is that to approach it. Like as an example, like, let's say I'm talking to a seller and let's say their mortgage is $1,500 and rent rates in the area are $1,300. I would ask the agent, or I'd ask the seller, let me ask you, would you rent out your house for $1,300 if your payment was $1,500? Well, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay, cool. So that's what I'm looking at with this property. So I'm kind of in a situation right now where, unless you can show me something else, like, I'm not sure if this is a good fit for me. Like, I think you're doing too much work, Naomi. I think you're doing way too much work and trying to figure all this shit out. What I would do if I was in your position is I would say, hey, there isn't oh my gosh, my mind just drew a blank. What's the word you just used?
value add.
Value add. Thank you. Gosh dang, on tip of my tongue. There isn't a value add play on here that I'm seeing with this property. So I wouldn't have a way to sell it to my sellers. Is there something different that perhaps maybe you or even the seller are seeing that maybe I'm not? Like, and this is a great lesson for everybody here. Like, you guys would get so much further ahead by just asking better questions. Like, there's no way I would even go to the seller, and I, like, all that information that you just gave Adam, like, I wouldn't even say anything like that. I would say, I would literally just call the seller and I'd be like, hey, I'm just looking at this. I don't really see any value add potential here. And this is the hard part for me.
Yep.
My other investors aren't really seeing a value add play here as well. And I just wanted to reach out to you to see maybe if you or your clients who own the property are seeing something different.
Mm-hmm.
What would they do if they were in my position?
So I've said that. And that's when they lean into the fact that I wouldn't do nothing. He's got this thing running like a well-oiled machine and it's netting over 500,000 a year. I wouldn't do anything to this.
Yeah,
Do you
that's
know
I
how
would
the
any
just
horse
buy it,
investors
is.
let
that
it.
you could introduce me to that would be interested in a play like that? Because my bottleneck right now that I'm worried about is my investors are looking for a value add as opposed to the cash flow perspective. Do you know anybody that I could potentially reach out to?
Yeah. Play uninterested if you have to. It doesn't make sense. Like, because here's the thing. Right now you can have your price or you can have your terms. You can't have both, right? You have to get one or the other. And so for you, what I would do is, okay, cool. If you want to sell it to me as a heavily cash flowing asset, you're gonna have to sell it to me steeply discounted, right? Then I'd immediately just go in for the kill, be like, cool, and it's 3.5 million. What? No, we can't take that. We're asking 5.5. Well, there's no value add potential. So you're just asking me to run it as is, and the building's gonna run itself into the ground pretty soon. So what am I gonna do? I can't turn the apartments. You won't let you tell me not to do it. So if I can't turn the apartments, why would I do that? Right? It's just like if Jesse's trying to sell me his house and he's got foundation issues and it's going to cost me $23,000 to fix foundation, and Jesse's ARV is 200,000, and I'm telling Jesse like, "Hey, bro, fix the foundation, and I'll give you the ARV," and he's like, "No, I don't want to do that. This house is in perfect condition. We've lived in it for the last 20 years." I'm like, "All right, that's cool, but you're not at ARV." No, it is. It is. In fact, I would run the house exactly the way that we were living in it now. How are you going to do that? There's foundation issues. There's that's going to bring on plumbing issues. It's going to bring on more issues. Like either you give me a $23,000 discount, or maybe even more than that, or you fix it, and then I give you ARV. You can have price or you can have terms. You can have both.
And the way that I would negotiate that, to go along with what Adam was saying, the way that I would negotiate that, I wouldn't come in because a man convinced against him. What's the word? A man convinced
Against
his will
is
is of the same
of
opinion
the
still.
same opinion. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you come in here and if you attack it like that, if you call them out and be like, well, you're not doing this and this doesn't make any sense, I would just reword it. And I think Adam was just trying to get the point out. I don't think that's how
Right.
Adam would communicate it, but just to go along with it, I would just say, hey, well, let me ask you, because there isn't any value add if I did buy it at this price with the foundation cracked, and I'm buying it at this price, like it doesn't make sense. What are you seeing that I could do differently? Because I'm buying it at ARV. Like I don't want to be upside down on this. And like throw it on them. Like come off and like let them solve your problem, because then they're going to start to see things. That's how you turn somebody, is you get them to see things from your perspective. When you fucking argue with them, then you're just gonna argue back and forth. So say, oh, that's great. You always agree. Just agree with them. Oh yeah, no, I agree. This is a great cash flowing asset. I'm worried about, you mentioned there may have been some foundation issues here. If I buy it at this price, I don't want to be upside down on this asset. There's no room for value add or anything like that. What do you think I should do?
I have something similar that I was talking to someone, a business broker,
Mhm.
and he was advertising a business. And what I was reading, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense for someone to want to buy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, but let me call this guy and talk to him, you know?
Mhm.
So I called him and I was telling him, I'm like, well, from what I'm reading, maybe you could help me understand, why would somebody want to buy this business? And he went on for like a half hour, and I'm not even kidding. Like he understood this business really well. And he's like, And he even went on to tell me a plan why this business, someone could buy it and actually turn it into a much profitable business. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you just do that? But he's like, no, I'm just in the business of helping business owners sell their businesses that they no longer want to be in, so, and I understood that. But if you ask those right questions, a lot of times you will get those answers. So it's just, I guess, the way you word it and ask it and the people you're talking to. So,
Yeah, I think opening them up for conversation, like you said, Pansy, will give you so much more intel than you would have gotten before. Um, and Jesse, to your point, yeah, I don't normally start out that way, but Jessica will tell you hands on, like I'm not afraid to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah, yeah.
they if they come to me and they're combative and they're like, yeah, but I just like, no, I'm not going to give you the financials. Okay, well, then how am I going to submit an LOI? Like, if I can't underwrite the property, how am I going to submit a proper LOI? So always get insider knowledge, and also just you have to ground people back. The last friend of mine I saw that was trying to sell his business, he was trying to sell a cattle ranch for 115 grand. Okay, well, there's a couple issues here. You don't own the land. It's on a 240-acre lease. There's like 60 head of cattle. There's a whole lot of equipment involved, but all these assets are worthless. They're all paid off. They're beat up. Like they're going to need to be replaced soon. So like, what are you really, really getting for the value? Once you add up the value of the steer and the value of the land, which there is no value to the land because it's not yours, and then the value of the equipment, which is functionally worthless. I don't know what he ended up selling it for, but I can tell you it wasn't 115,000. It probably realistically was in like the 60 range. But likewise, like a friend of mine came to me, or I had a call with a private equity fund manager the other day, and we were looking at businesses on Biz Buy Sell. And I showed him it was a sawmill. And he's like, well, this seems priced a little bit high given the average industry multiple, unless they have assets on the balance sheet. And I said, dude, it's a sawmill. They're going to have a ton of assets on the balance sheet because they're probably going to have trucks. They're going to have heavy equipment. They're going to have, machinery inside the building. They're going to have all kinds of assets that go along inside the building, whether it's new computers or whatever. So I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably where the gap is, but it's probably not actually overpriced. We just need to find out what's on the balance sheet. So yeah, Naomi, just open them up a little bit, kind of talk to them. You want to enter that parlay. You want to get them to see, you know, if like Pansy said, if you're gonna run it this way, why aren't you running it that way? Like one of the things the farmer had tried to throw in on the ranch was he's like, well, you can get all these government contracts. Okay, well then why didn't you do it? It's that age old question. If you're so smart, then why didn't you do it?
Yeah, questions are so asking questions, the right questions is such a game changer. Okay. And I'm just so direct to seller focused that I think it just took me a few days to realize that I'm just going to have to go through this because there's actually a little bit more to the story. The guy that is got the owner's ear that's like really close to him, he's the one who told the wholesaler about the deal that told me about the deal. And so this wholesaler is telling me every time this guy is talking about a property, he says it's related to the owner. So that's in the back of my head. Now I go on this totally unrelated brunch day with a superstar female lady that's in this market. And she's like, that motel didn't sell. There was a guy trying to buy it last June. And then she told me the guy's name. And it was the same guy that had told the wholesaler that told me. So I'm like, oh, okay, so he's not related. He was trying to buy the place. So then I went and tried to find the owner. And I wound up finding the owner's son. And then I talked to the son, and the son sent me to the agent. And so when I talked to the agent, I told the agent about I said I was trying to reach the owner directly because I wasn't sure if this guy that I was talking to who was representing himself as the nephew. And he was like, oh no, I know the guy. So at this point, now I have to repair this relationship because the guy that told us 5.6, you know, he said he was plugged in with the owner, but I didn't know. I had questions after I heard he was the buyer last year. So he calls me back and he's upset, right? Because he feels like I tried to, you know what I'm saying, question his credibility and he's something like a big deal. So this is all the reasons why I like to go direct to seller. But anyway, after having figured all of that out, I found out that even the agent is a minion in this equation. Okay. The guy that originally took it to the wholesaler is the go-to guy. He's the one that could arrange a meeting. You know what I'm saying? If it came down to it. And that's exactly where I was at. So when I found out that he wanted to be the buyer last year, I already know that one of my next questions to him when I talk to him is, why didn't you buy it? Like, what scared you off from buying the deal? Because he said that if this owner couldn't sell it, that he would just go ahead and take it over. But what's got you not interested? What's got you not chomping at the bit to take it over? And like to Jesse's point, not coming to them like, okay, well, you don't want this and you don't want that and you don't want that to happen. Well, instead being like, well, here's my concern. And because you know this market seller way better than I do, right? Like you were doing real estate before it was even on my radar, right? I'm hoping you can school me on something. I'm this is a big undertaking for me, I'll be honest. You know, and just play the rookie role, but not the goofy rookie. Okay. The one
Well,
who's
Naomi,
resourceful and figure stuff out.
I think you're going through too many levels of opaqueness there. At that point, if there's that many barriers to entry and you got to play the game of who's who, it's probably just not a deal. And that might even be your biggest negotiation tactic, is just being prepared to walk away. Because as soon as they think that there is no buyer, there is no deal, guess what? All of a sudden, everybody becomes a little bit more clear and a little bit more favorable.
Well, I know who is now. It's the guy who was supposed to have been the owner last year and is supposed to be the nephew and blah blah blah. So I know who is, and I think that I even have I think that he would arrange a meeting if I told him that I wanted to, you know, give the owner a mini business plan, if you will, and vision, whatever, maybe a rendering of what I wanted to see in that empty space type thing. But I know who to talk to now, so I'm clear on that. What I'm saying is
Yeah,
I
but you're
agree with
still a
you guys
connection removed, is what I'm trying to say.
from the
You still
owner.
don't have, yeah, you still don't have a direct line with the owner, and at the end of the day, that's the only person that matters. That's the one who's going to be responsible whether this deal goes through or not.
Okay, so the next order of business then should be to schedule a meeting to get that intermediary, whatever person to schedule a meeting. He could be present if he, you know, the owner wants him there, but
Just get a direct line, and if you can't get a direct line, just be like, "Look, bro, I'm not here to play games." You know, however you have to phrase it. Like I said, you're allowed to be nicer than I am. I'm usually not, but um, you know, you're not here to go through an intermediary. Eventually, at the end of the day, you do have to get to the owner. Usually an LOI is what would happen in order for that to happen. Right? Is what would get you to the negotiating table.
okay.
So maybe you do that. Maybe you submit an LOI. You tell them like, look, and I would submit a real low ball offer because you're like, there's no value add here. I don't know what the play is. We're trying to open this up to negotiations, and we're trying to discover more about the financials. And this is your opportunity for you to tell me why you think it's worth what you think it's worth.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll get that meeting. I'll get that meeting and I'll ask the right questions. Asking the right questions is absolutely key. I just watched a YouTube video the other day with that ex-CIA guy with the curly hair.
Yeah, Bustamante.
Yes, and he
Yeah,
was
he's been
talking
making his
about
rounds.
he was talking about when you're networking with intentionality, and he was saying that you should have like your first 5 questions lined up.
Mm-hmm.
You should have your first 5 questions lined up when you have an interaction with someone. So what that means is it's not you just know what you want to say. It's if they say this, then you're going to say that. Or if they say this, then you're going to say that. You know, having all of that lined up so that basically the beginning part of the conversation is on autopilot. And then hold your question. The first part of the conversation is on autopilot. Meanwhile, you get to use your real focus to analyze their body language and what sort of individual you're dealing with there. So
Go
asking
go
the right
read
question.
Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. That'll
Okay.
help. a lot.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great one.
Yeah, I've
Never-
read that one 3 or 4 times. It's always worth it.
Okay. Will do. It's on the list.
Jesse, we're kind of come up like we're on the top of the hour already, so I don't want to keep you too long. But do you have any other kind of advice, any closing thoughts, anything that you want to kind of present to people to kind of put a bow on this?
Yeah, actually. Naomi, can I pick on you?
Please do. Please
Can I
do.
go
Take the
like,
gloves off. Take the gloves off.
can I work like through you to everybody else who watches this?
Absolutely.
I love the tenacity that you have here. I love who I've gotten to see as I've gotten to know you more and more. What I would like to see moving forward is I see how much time like this one deal is taking up. There's so many people involved. There's so many variables. There's so much due diligence on this thing. I can only imagine, there's a lot of conversation being had with other people other than obviously just me and Adam about it. Where I would like to see your skill set develop and grow and or the agent. And you and I see this is the hamster wheel that I see everybody else on as well, because everybody else has a deal they're working on, and it's this deal, it's got this and it's got that, and this is the trouble, yada 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 yada. Like, this is the hamster wheel, and then you'll spend X amount of time trying to figure it out, and then it's either you're either going to move it forward or it's going to fall through. Now, if it falls through, then you wasted all of this time. When in reality, like, what if you leveraged what you're already doing, the thinking, the coming in here and having the questions, asking questions and getting clarity, like the amount of time that you're already investing in yourself, being around the right people, and like you said, in the right rooms. What you need to be focusing on is developing your leadership skills so you can bring other people in to do all this shit right here, because that's their zone of genius. Your zone of genius is to go find 10 more of these types of deals and let other people come in and try to figure out what the hell these answers are, because that's their zone of genius. Not everybody wants to be an owner. Not everybody wants to be a CEO.
I think it's that. And also to piggyback off what Jesse's saying is realizing really early on, disqualifying people quickly, which is one thing that I'm pretty good at. If I feel like Jesse's jerking me around, I will end that call in 10 minutes. If I have to call Naomi, to call Pansy, because one of them was, Jesse's brother, sister, nephew, alleged buyer last year, like gonna take over the property, not take over the property, do this, do that, whatever. I'm just out of the deal. And I will tell them outright, I will say, when you figure this shit the fuck out, then you can call me. When you're ready to entertain something serious, like when you're ready to sit down at the negotiating table, Jesse, then we'll talk. When I don't have to go through Naomi, Pansy, Jessica, and Patrick to get there, guess what? Then we can have a conversation. And sometimes
Adam,
you
I
just
don't know if I
gotta be
said
hard.
it, bro. I had the right person in the first place. It was me and my overthinking, maybe my females thing. I don't know. But I started questioning if the person that I was talking to was the person that I should be talking to when somebody else told me that he claimed he was buying it last year. And then that's when I started the search. But the person I was talking to this guy all along, and he just felt, like some type of way because, like, why would you go beyond me? Like, I am the plug. Like you talking to all these other people and you ain't had to talk to none of them people because I was the plug in the first place. So that was that was kind of my fault in that sense. But yeah. But I am talking to the right person. I am talking to the right person.
Either way, I mean, a plug is going to play plug plays, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to be the most important person in the room. And I'm not here to play the games. You want a deal? Sit me down with the person that I need to talk to get the deal done. You're not it. You're not the decision maker.
Yeah. That's why I say I'm gonna get the plug to schedule a meeting with the owner. And then we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes. We're gonna get it all laid out there. And to your point, Mr. Stanton, so I had a millionaire recently tell me I was asking all the wrong questions. And it was because I was telling him too many of the things that I had going on. And it was and he is a developer. He his zone of genius was developing 350 plus units in a place where the AMI was like $20,000, okay, in Fresno, California somewhere. Okay. And I'm telling him about too many things. And so because we were talking about the motel and I had already mentioned the fix and flip situation, I didn't mention the fact that I just found a way to generate inbound leads because I do need an active income while I'm looking because those bigger deals, you're not going to close a ton of those a year. Jesse has pulled our coattail to the fact that you can get paid an acquisition fee when you buy, but if you're doing larger acquisitions, you're not doing those every month. So in order to have the active income, I've figured out a way to get the inbound leads, fix and flip the ones that are just too sweet to pass. And because I've already established a network of buyers, I can just pass them along to, anything that doesn't fit my criteria of being a super sweet lick like this particular one here. Like if it's not this sweet, we're over $100,000 in equity and a light fix on a small property, like I'm just going to pass it on because again, multifamily is my mission and I know I have to have a main focal point, but I do feel like if you are there's visionaries and then there's like super visionaries. I don't know if a super visionary is really capable of doing just one thing. I think that if Jesse told us all the things that he was doing, our brains would probably explode. There's no way he's just doing one thing. I don't believe it. But I'm just saying. So I am working on larger acquisitions. I'm keeping my ear to the streets with City Hall because we just had the Notre Dame School of Architecture. I'm seeing what grant monies are going to become available. So I'm making friends with the mayor's office and the executive director of redevelopment and the attorney for the city. So I can get permits pushed through. So I've been collecting pieces as I've been going because I've been networking intentionally. I'm not talking to nobody for longer than 10 minutes that ain't gonna move the needle when I need the needle moved. So I'm not saying I know it all because I'm still listening. Obviously, I'm a sponge. I'm just picking up what you laying down, bro. I don't like dealing with minions either, Adam. But I am gonna kill him with kindness. I am gonna kill him with kindness because that's part of my Christian DNA. Or I'm trying to be a Christian. I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm trying to be a Christian. I know what it takes to make the cut. So I'm working on some things. I'm under construction. And so I'm not going to, I ain't gonna get spicy with them. I'm going to ask them artfully curated questions, okay, under the Make It Make Sense Act. So I don't gotta call nobody stupid. If I ask you the right questions the right way, we're gonna both come to the same conclusion of who the fool is in this conversation. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I totally get it. I'm not playing with no minions. That's why I'm a DTS kind of girl. It just so happened because, like I said, this deal came to me from a wholesaler. I found out later it was on market, and I had to deal with minions. But you know, I could deal with those too. They're just people. It's just conversations. Once you learn how to talk to people, they're just people.
That's it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm excited to see what you do.
Yes, sir.
And guys,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the outro. We'll cut the recording, but I'll leave the Zoom room open so if people can hang out for a little bit. So as everybody knows, we do these every Sunday. We're here. There's different guests every week. A lot of them have been Growth Co people. Thank you, Jesse. So anybody that wants to come join us, they can join us live. They can find it on my Facebook. Jesse, where can they find you at?
Facebook, the gram. I
One of
took
those
down
two.
my OnlyFans, so those are kind of the only two things I'm
Darn.
working right now. Just Facebook
gonna-
and Instagram.
I was going to push that one for you. So yeah, guys, Jesse R. Stanton, look him up, connect with him. He's a super cool dude. He is one of my favorite people in Sub 2. And the only thing that we ever ask of y'all is if we made you think, if we made you laugh, if we brought you value, if we made you smile, that you come back next week and you bring a friend and that you watch these on YouTube. So till next time, guys, talk soon.